I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 137. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hey everyone, I have a special treat for you today, and then again in a couple weeks we're doing something very similar. I have invited two private clients to come on the podcast, and the first you'll hear from today is Michael Urbina from the Urbina Law Firm. Now, he gives an introduction to himself in the conversation, but I wanted to just share up front that the reason I wanted to have him on, and then also another private client that's coming on in a couple weeks, is because when we did their annual retreat for 2022, we did that in December of 2021, the things that came out of that retreat, and the retreat itself was so good that I just wanted a way to be able to share it with listeners. And so he agreed to come on and share and to have conversation around his lessons learned, which we go over at every retreat, and where they are, what's in store for the future, how they're thinking about things, the hard stuff, the exciting stuff, just a bit about their journey. And the reason I think that you guys will really enjoy it is because not only is this a peer of yours that you get to hear what they're up to and how they're doing things, but you also get to hear from someone who applies velocity work and our frameworks and our mindset to their firm. You get to hear what it's like for them. Well, let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Michael Urbina. All right, welcome everyone to this week's episode. Super pumped. I have Michael Urbina here of Urbina Law Firm. Thanks for joining me today.
It's my honor. It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay, tell everyone who you are, where your firm is, what you do, all that jazz.
Okay. So you said my name.
Mm-hmm.
I am from Puerto Rico. I moved to the state of Georgia when I was 13. I have an immigration law practice in Marietta, Georgia, still. I've been on my own for about 8 years now. Mm-hmm. We used to do immigration and criminal, but we niched down to immigration. And funny story, I never thought I would end up being an immigration lawyer. Everybody thought I would because I'm bilingual, but it was more of a hand that life dealt to me as to how I ended up doing immigration. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like it now. I think it's where I was meant to be. It's what I'm passionate about. And some days I want to pull my hair out, and other days I really, really enjoy the practice. But yeah, I'm just one person trying to learn how to be better at this particular field all day, every day. So
you strike me as this is where you're supposed to be. Every conversation we have, and I've seen you have a lot of conversations about your firm and about your clients, and it just seems like you are passionate and it's meaningful work to you. It's very clear it's meaningful work to you.
It is. I think the one thing is that, you know, with immigration lawyers in particular, and I'm going to kind of generalize here a little bit, but I think there's people that are passionate to a fault, to the point that they tend to create problems for themselves or sometimes even for their clients because there's so much emotion involved in the process. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, they try to make certain things be adversarial where they shouldn't be. I'm passionate about what I do, but not to the point where I let that cloud perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that is rare to find, except in the few circles of people that are also business oriented. Because I find that it's either someone it's very hard to find like an in-between between being business oriented or super passionate about immigration rights and things like that. I can tell you honestly, it's like a handful of immigration lawyers and I know that can do a good job tiptoeing that line. Mm-hmm. But it's usually they fall in one or the other side of the spectrum. So it's interesting because I feel like PI lawyers, they're very clear. It's not like they're passionate about, I mean, they can be, but it's a business model and it's passionate about the practice per se. But the emotional aspects of the cases, yeah, every now and then I think there'll be some cases that they're passionate about, but it's very routine type work. And immigration law is like a puzzle and you try to solve that puzzle for every person and every puzzle is super different. So trying to figure that part out, it can be challenging, but Yeah,
I
it's just
love that you just shared that because I didn't have the language for that, but listening to you talk, that's the thing I notice about you. You enjoy the puzzle
mhm,
and putting the puzzle together, like figuring it out. And because of the conversations that we've had, I also know you're very business minded and
mhm.
you do seem to toe that line really well. And I hadn't thought of it the way that you just explained it, but yeah, you're in that camp. There's some part of you that's gripped a bit by the puzzle and figuring that out and serving your clients and being really smart in that way, but then also certainly for the business as well. That's cool. It's really
Yeah. I
cool.
mean, I don't understand it. Maybe it's just like a mindset kind of thing, but I don't see why you can't be both. But
Yeah.
again, I've had a lot of conversations with other lawyers. They either fall on one side of the camp or the other,
Yeah.
and they just can't grasp it. And
Yeah.
again, there's plenty of people that I've met through velocity work or in different groups that can do a good job of manning both sides, but it's rare. It's a rare
Why
occurrence.
why do you think that? Do you think that they just haven't had the same models that you've had? Have you seen people go before you where you're like that's how I'm doing it and you can sniff out like that there's a balance there that's really healthy, or did you not? It's just who you are.
No, it's not about who I am. I think it was more about what I didn't want to be. Like
Uh-huh.
when I first started, I worked for another firm and just watching how they did things, I was like, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me how this is done. And I also saw other immigration lawyers that fell, in like the very passionate camp that, I mean, they were like 50 years old, but I could have guessed there were 100 because they were just so burned out. I was like, I just don't see why it has to be that way. Like, and at the beginning, a lot of times it made me question whether I even wanted to keep doing this because I was like, I don't want to be 50 and feel like I'm 90. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But the more I kept digging into how to do things better and find like alternative ways of being efficient or just trying to push the envelope, I found that you don't have to be the burned out 50-year-old, or you also don't have to be this greedy person that doesn't care about. There's a good way to balance that out. And what I saw from the beginning was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to do the opposite of those things. And that's kind of how I got started with the firm. Everybody was flocking to one county. I went the opposite way. Everybody was like, oh,
Yeah.
well, we're going to charge for consults. I was like, I'm not going to charge for consults. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how we built our model, just being different from what everybody else was doing.
So good. I wanted to have you on the podcast because, well, let me back up for everybody. You're one of my few private clients. I have a select few, and Michael Urbina is one of them. So I have the privilege of getting in a room with you every quarter and evaluating the previous quarter and making plans for the next. And then at the turn of the year, of course, we plan bigger, further. And so I've been privy to a lot of conversations, a lot of hard stuff, a lot of really big wins. And the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast is because you are the kind of person who constantly keeps pushing at learning and developing yourself in ways that you didn't ever think you would, but you are, and you're willing to. There's a willingness about you, that a vulnerability, but still, I feel like you toe that line really well, is also of vulnerability and very open and willing to learn and to grow and to look at yourself in the mirror and to be a bit of a hard ass when it comes to the business side of things. And that's not easy. People usually swing one way or the other because they don't know how to walk that line. And at the last retreat, which was in December 2021, there were some things that came out of that I was like, oh, this is so good. Will you please come on the podcast? And you agreed. So thanks for being here. After every private client retreat, my team puts together a retreat debrief. And that is basically to summarize for the client, but really helpful and useful for us too, all the things that came out of it, all the goals, the vision, the rocks, the core values, everything that we talk about, we try to capture and debrief. And I have that pulled up so that we can refer to it a bit. The first thing, though, that I wanted to talk about was some of the lessons learned that you gave. We always talk about lessons learned. And then I definitely want to talk about the new core value you added this year. And yeah, we can just see where the conversation goes from there. Does that sound good?
Sounds good. You may have to
Okay.
remind me to some of the lessons
Oh,
learned,
yeah.
but
Oh, don't you worry. I have got it.
there was a
already.
lot of stuff we talked about.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I got to give you guys credit. Sometimes it's really difficult for people to churn out lessons, and you guys always have a ton, which is good. It's really good. So the lessons that I'll stick with yours. Your rock star COO, who also happens to be your wife, is at these meetings. She gave a lot of lessons learned as well. And then you had an additional team member, a team leader come, and you also have another team leader, but who was out. And so it was just three of you that happened to be at this retreat. So I have lessons learned from all of you guys, but I'll stick with yours. It's like a full page, but I'll stick with yours for the sake of the podcast. Okay, your first one said, look at people beyond numbers because sometimes passion and loyalty cannot be quantified. So I want to hear just you riff about that for a bit.
So a very quick backstory to that. So well, you mentioned that there's 4 people on our leadership team, including my wife and myself, and we have 2 additional members. Mm-hmm. We used to have a 5th member in that group, and that 5th member was one of our supervisors, and it just didn't work out. We actually had to remove her from our leadership team, and that ended up leading to her leaving the firm entirely on her own. Mm-hmm. But the reason why I was looking at that is because she was a very numbers oriented person in that sense, not a lot of emotion in it. And she recommended or kept pushing for us to fire my most senior employee, senior in every aspect of the word, because she's the oldest person in our firm, but also the employee I've had for the longest. She's actually been working full time in my firm, even more than my wife. And they just couldn't get along. And the one thing I always admire about my longtime employee is that she's very loyal, aside from being very good at what she does. But I had noticed that there was a decrease in just her overall productivity, given that I had delegated to this other team member her reviewing of that particular role. I was inclined to consider that option because that's what her job entailed, to recommend when someone was not working out. Mm-hmm. When this person leaves, that employee's productivity, when the leader left, my senior paralegal, her productivity went through the roof. Mm-hmm. She literally just went right back up to her previous productivity level and then some. And I realized that at that point, it wasn't so much about the numbers or the output. It was I had put the incorrect person to sort of review her work. And it wasn't so much about, numbers and everything, about the fact that she is loyal to a fault. Because even when she told me, she was like, I thought about leaving because of the situation with the leader that left, but I just couldn't do it. She was like, I'm loyal to you. I'm loyal to what you guys stand for here in this firm. And I was willing to endure this situation in spite of the fact that I was unhappy. But now that these changes were made or these changes occurred, I just feel unleashed. And I mean, boy, was it true. It made me think that a lot of times, productivity and numbers are important, but you got to look beyond that. Because for all intents and purposes, I think any other person would have looked at that situation and be like, yeah, she's right. This person needs to go. When in reality, the problem was the leader. It wasn't the staff member. Yeah. And it just really made me think about who it is that you want at the table to make those decisions. Because sometimes a person can say all the right things, but their approach or the way they go about doing things is just completely wrong and leading you down a path that is not where you need to be. And that's where that lesson came from, because we could have gone down a wrong path. And I think that if I had followed that advice against my gut, and the crazy part was that everyone in the leadership team agreed with her except me. I was like, no, I just don't feel that this is right. And everybody was making fun of me, saying that it's because, I have a good relationship with this person, that I was ignoring, the numbers. I was like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to ignore the numbers in this case. And thank God I did, because if we had followed that advice, we would have been in a huge hole, because this person is very valuable and clearly more loyal and more valuable than the leader was.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, let's say a flavor of this happens again in the future. You'll just do more investigating, it sounds like. What do you think you'll do different if you're faced with something similar in the future from the get-go?
From the get-go, I think the biggest thing for me was to be more hands-on about, or at least be more observant about how people manage other individuals. And I think that I thought I was, but not to the degree or to the purposeful conversations that should have been done that I didn't do, either because I didn't have time or I really thought that everything was going well. It taught me not to assume that everything is perfect and to always dig and find out what's happening. Even if you think you know, still try to dig and find out more, because it might be staring you right in the face and you don't see it because you're too busy with other things.
Absolutely. So good. Your second lesson learned said, we cannot undervalue the importance of human capital. It's sort of in tandem, but yeah, I'd love to hear what your thoughts about that.
So this year we did a lot of restructuring in the firm. I think that for us, 2020 was a year of sort of reaction, and 2021 was learning and taking action. And we took everything that we learned from 2020 and kind of put in different people, different procedures, you name it. I mean, we did a lot of changes in 2021. And that led us to, unfortunately, make a lot of changes with regards to our staff. Our staff at the beginning of the year versus at the end of the year, there was a substantial change, not at the leadership level. We only had one person leave there. Everybody else that is on the leadership team has been with us for 5+ years at this point, or close to 5 years. But we realized that we needed to have the right people in the right seats. And more than that, we needed more people in more seats because we had way too many people wearing multiple hats. And as much as we always say that that's a no-no, I kind of felt comfortable with, so we made all these changes so we can have the firm have a little bit of a healthier period with regards to our payroll, because we had a big staff at the beginning of 2021, but it was just not a productive level or where we wanted it to be. So we knew that we needed to change. What happened was that I got too comfortable with people wearing too many hats, and I created obviously a sense of people feeling a little overwhelmed. And I'm being totally open book right now with everything. And it made me realize that you cannot put a number on having the right people and having a firm with the level of intense growth that you would like to have if you don't hire constantly and correctly. And there's a member of Maximum Lawyer that mentioned that the minute you figure out that you think you need to hire, you're probably already 3 months late. And yeah, that's exactly what happened to us. You know, at the point we realized, okay, we probably need to hire. We're like, no, we're about 3 months behind on that.
Yeah.
Which is why we just hired 6 people right off the bat between the end of the year and now. And even with you, when you have overseas people, it's the same deal because it's still individuals that are helping you. So whether it's someone in-house or overseas, you always need to make sure that you're properly staffed, even if it's scary, because the reality is that it's going to, 1, stunt your growth, but 2, is going to create a level of stress, not just on you, but on your staff. Basically, what that creates is lesser productivity, but more unhappiness. And if you have an unhappy staff or unhappy team, you're just creating an environment where people may want to leave. So cannot undervalue that. You have to always put a high value on that. And it may feel sometimes like it's a hefty price when you look at payroll numbers and they're super high, but it's worth it, especially if you have the right individuals in the right seats.
You know, that makes me think of, I say this only because I think it'd be helpful for people to think about for themselves. You can't always have blanket statements about, even though there's good guides in terms of X% of your revenue, you and I both subscribe a bit to the idea that about 1/3 of the revenue should go towards people. And though that's a beautiful thought, it doesn't always bake out like that. And it can be strategic to not be that way, right? You made a strategic decision because you had been understaffed this year. There's work that you're behind on that you want to really make headway on and get caught up, in your words. So you're hiring in order to do that and to create capacity for the growth, both. And so for the moment, for a small window of time, you'll be over on that percentage of revenue. So you'll be over 1/3 of the revenue going towards people, but it's an investment in the growth. You can see the map, you know exactly what you're doing. And I only share that because you've been on a journey just figuring out where your comfort levels are and getting wise enough to make those calls to go outside of the bounds for strategic reasons. And that's just experience and wisdom. You have to know the business and understand it so well to be able to make a call to go outside of the guides that are given out in the world. And there's oftentimes reason to go outside of those lines, but you have to be very smart and a lot of experience with your firm to make that call. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but I've just watched you get a lot. You're so wise now with some of those things that, because you've been put into practice with them for a while now.
I agree with everything you said. I would just add being flexible, because I think that a lot of times we focus so much on what our goals are and hitting the numbers that we set for ourselves or this and that. When I think about our 2020 original goals that you helped us, come up with back in 2020, and the fact that, there were some numbers that we hit, but others that we didn't. Some people may think that that was a failure. The way I see it, 2021 was a huge success in the sense that we are in such an amazing position right now to sustain the growth that keeps coming our way. That not only do I think we can hit whatever numbers we set up for 2022, but we probably will exceed them because we sort of took a step back and be like, okay, we need to be flexible about this. If I had been like a hard-headed person and not thought that, hey, you know what, even if I don't hit these numbers, I need to make some changes that will benefit us for the future. We still did very well in 2021. We were still very profitable. Like there was nothing that I can like, oh, this was a problem. No, we did good. But I feel like in many ways, I feel so much smarter and in so much more control of where we're headed, like the direction of the car, if you're going to call it that, that you just need to be willing to be flexible, because you can do whatever you want. But if you're not willing to reshift, refocus, and be flexible with your journey, you're going to find yourself in a weird position.
Yeah. I don't know if this word resonates with you at all, but I think of you as agile. Like you can play ball, like you can go back and forth and back and forth. I don't know basketball terms very well, but I'm just imagining someone dribbling side to side to side to side. And like you can do that and get around obstacles because you have that agility about you, which is a mindset. You have that.
Yeah. Adapt or die. I mean,
adapt or die. That's Michael Urbina's saying, y'all.
I mean, it really, it is so good. And it's not even mine. I can't say that I didn't make that up, but I mean, it applies to so many things, like how you shift your mindset. For example, immigration is constantly changing all the time. From the time that I started this firm to the Trump years to now, like, I mean, every year, sometimes in every month, there's like, okay, there's a new case. This changes a lot of things. You have to change that mindset, or sometimes they'll be handling certain types of cases, but not these other ones. So what are you going to do? You're just going to sit there and not get hired because immigration is focusing on these type of cases now? No, you need to change your mindset, like adapt to the fact that these are the type of cases that you're going to have to target now, unless you made a strategic decision that no, those don't make sense to me. But I feel, and I've seen many immigration firms die because they're like, oh no, well, they're not doing this now, so I'm just going to keep focusing on what I used to do. Okay, good luck with that. That's going to go away. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So you have to be flexible enough to know that, yes, you can still practice your preferred area, but if they're not going to do things the same way, and again, immigration changes all the time, then you won't make it. And I've seen plenty of people make that mistake and I've seen so many firms flounder, or people just switch practice areas completely because they were like, no, I can't keep up, and just disappear.
Yeah. Well, that's not ULF, is it?
It better not be. I'll make sure it's not.
Another lesson, the cycle of revenue is predictable when we are not paying attention. However, when we are purposeful on our attention intake, the cycle doesn't matter. Hang on. I feel like there's a typo there, actually. Is there?
There might be, but I know exactly what it is.
You know the point. Okay. So share the point. Yeah.
So essentially what we realized is that for years, we always knew that there was sort of a cycle in when we would get the most amount of cases at the beginning of the year, because people get a lot of tax refunds and whatnot. And then in the summer, because people tend to get in trouble in the summer and then end up in removal proceedings or things like that. And we always knew that December, like end of November, December was like super slow months because people work slows down, people travel, don't pay attention a lot to their cases, so they don't consider hiring a priority. what we learned or what we did was that this year, we always did intake in a different way, but this year we put a lot of attention into building an intake team.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were so purposeful about our procedures and having people just only dedicated to that, it didn't matter, because it was consistent after we did that. All these months when we were very much purposeful and paying attention to what was working, what was not with our intake system. And I had an attorney specifically focused on that, not necessarily so much on legal work. This past December was one of the best months we've had in firm history.
Yeah.
And I was never the case, ever. December was always a slow month. So it realized that, there can be cycles, but that usually happens if you don't have a specific system or focus on it. And if you have a system, if you have a plan to prepare for these things and people focused on it, it doesn't matter that it's a slow month. You can still build it into one of the best months you've had if you essentially prepare for it and know that it's coming and just adapt your procedures to make it better.
I'm curious, do you envision that holding as you move forward? Because really the work that attorney did that you put on intake was increasing conversion was a big piece of it. I don't know if you want to say other contributing factors, if I'm missing something there with like the lever that was really pulled to make that better.
It was not only increasing the conversion rate, but also the speed. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times, when you have more people doing follow-ups and things like that, when you have not just one person or two, when you have a full team of people focusing on that, it helps decrease that turnaround rate from potential client to converted client. Yeah. So it's not just the rate, it's the speed at which you convert the person.
Okay. Yeah.
And we saw a huge increase in that once we had a full-blown team just focused only on that, and an attorney being a part of that 100%. Yeah, that was huge.
I mean, do you think moving forward, because it's sort of like this last, quarter to 5 months maybe is really where that focus has been. So do you feel like it ramped and it's almost just like shoved your firm at a new level where the cycle is just going to be different? Like maybe there will be a cycle now, but it's going to be different because of the increased conversion rate and speed. Yeah,
absolutely. Because not only did we change the attention of the team, we also improved our internal system to follow up with these things and make it faster too. And right now, it's not necessarily about one particular individual. So like the attorney that was helping me do that, she went on maternity leave. So you would think, oh, that's going to be a problem. Not really, because we had the system that was able to help us automate a lot of things. Anyone can step into that role at this point and help out, or at least I can do it in a way that I can still step in, but it's not going to be like as time consuming. So we were able to figure out a way to keep that level up regardless of who's sitting down in that position. Ideally, yes, you will have a lead attorney, but we can still do without. And like you said, I think the whole change in the process and the team knocked us into like a different level that I can see it. We're on the 5th day and I'm like, okay, I see things are churning faster than they used to, or turning around a lot faster.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
So good. And that, talk about right seats. I mean, you putting her solely on intake, taking her out of legal work. I don't know. What percentage legal work do you think she's doing? Or
at the end? 0.
Yeah. Okay. So she was just on intake. I mean, that was a big decision to do that, and felt right to you. It didn't seem like it was too tough of a decision, but it was a big decision. And look where it got you. That's great.
Yeah. No, it was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what I was thinking. The right seat. Like you got her in the seat. She's the kind of person that can be good at anything, but you put her in a seat that she enjoys, like the game of in the competition, and she's detail oriented. It's the right seat for her.
100%. Again, when you look at your team, you got to look at people's and what gets them going. And this person that we're talking about, her and I share a competitive passion. So a lot of times, like we did this team exercise with people where we had them together work on, have you ever seen those perfection boards? It's like a bunch of little shapes that it's like a puzzle where you would fit little plastic shapes into the board and you have to fill the board before it pops. It's like a super old game. Okay. So we had them work together like in pairs to see who would do the most amount of pieces before the time ran out. Yeah. And when we did that exercise, everybody practiced whatnot. But at the end, she was like, you and I, let's see who does it faster. And that's just how she is, and everything is like, you would tell her, hey, we want to do this, like, okay. But the minute you're like, I bet I can do more than you, it's like, what? And all of a sudden it was just like, so the minute I was like, hey, we have this goal, I don't know if you can do it. And the minute she's like, what do you mean I can't do it? She knocked them all out. And I think it's just finding out in your team, what are those pressure points that you can give them? Like we had someone was like, hey, if you really want to work from home more, we're going to need you to knock out this number of cases. And it's not that she can't do it, but it was like, you're giving them this little challenge.
Yeah.
And every person is going to take it different. Some people you're like, hey, we're going to give you a $500 bonus. I'll give you 2 extra days off. They're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
You just have to know which buttons to push because not everyone is motivated by the same things.
Yes.
In her case, competition is a big thing. So once I made it into like a competition, that was the end of it. She was like, what? Challenge accepted.
Do you just get to know people and you start to learn their preferences, or do you explicitly ask their preferences, like with what they value?
We definitely like to make it a point to make sure that we spend time that is not like work related with people. Even if it's just like, we still, even with COVID and everything, try to find ways to have lunch with the entire office. Because I feel like in those circumstances, you really get to know people, what's bothering them, what's not bothering them, what they prefer. We buy them lunch at least once a week, every week. And again, you can see what they order. If they order the same thing, they'd like to order something different. You get to know people's preference to that. But more importantly, and I can't take credit for this, I saw Chris Nicolason did this and we were like, brilliant. He did like a sheet where he asked people the kind of things that he liked. And we were like,
got that from us.
Yeah, so
that's good. I'm glad people use it. That's supposed to be helpful.
Yeah. And we started doing that too. But before, I mean, that we didn't do that until maybe like 3 or 4 months ago. Like, to be honest, it hasn't been something we've done for a long time. But we realized that we knew people better than we thought because when our leadership team was reviewing those forms, we were like, all right, let's take a guess. Who is going to say this and that? And we knew people pretty well, you know? So I think that you have to make it a point, not just to fill out forms or like go ask them. Naturally find ways to naturally observe people. And Giselle always makes fun of me because she says I try to observe people's like quirks or the way they interact or whatnot too much. She was like, you just notice too many things. I'm like, I find that interesting because I feel like I know, you know, and I think I even told you, sometimes you make certain faces or gestures that I'm like, I know exactly what she's thinking or about to say because we've talked enough that I feel like I've gotten to know some of your preferences, your quirks. I'm like, yeah, I don't think Melissa would like that. Oh yeah, Melissa's going to love this. Like things like that, you know, and we've done the same thing here. There's a lot of times that things come up. I'm like, you know, who's not going to like that? So-and-so, this is terrible for them. So you have to put them in natural situations where you just let them show you who they are. And that's way better than asking. Cause sometimes I feel like when you ask, some people might tell you, like, be honest, or some other people might tell you what they think you want to hear. And then it becomes a situation where you're like, you're not really getting true honesty from this person. They just want to show you what they think you want to hear. So
yeah, definitely. I do agree that I don't know what they ended up calling it. We call it a celebration survey. It's a getting to know you form that allows us to help them celebrate wins in their preferred ways. But it isn't easy still. It's kind of still feels generic if you just go off of that form. I think some people don't know how to answer some of the questions, you know? And so it's like, they just put the best thing they could think of at the moment. And then you give them a gift card for the thing that they could think of in the moment. And it's still a little generic. So it's so much better with the combo. I think what you're saying, there's a lot of merit to that just observing, caring. Like you guys care a lot about your team. You do. That's
sometimes to a fault.
I don't speak Spanish, but there is a word that like rolls around in my head when I think about you guys in certain lights. The word is family, but in Spanish. That's the way it is in my head. So will you say the word just so I don't botch
Familia?
it? Yeah. That word rolls around in my head sometimes when I think about you guys. Like I can think of moments where when I was at your office in September, we all had lunch sitting around a table. And that is a really unique experience that not a lot of teams do. It seems like maybe they do, but like that was like, it felt like a family meal. And people weren't just quiet sitting there. Everyone was talking and engaging and laughing. And it felt like a family, not just everybody sitting around a table eating together.
And
Yeah.
that's how it is every day. Like,
Yeah.
when COVID allows it, it sort of started as I think it was like one day years ago. It's like, hey, let's all have lunch together. And we liked it so much. I was like, we're going to do this every day. We're going
Yeah.
to specifically take this time. I don't force them to sit down and have lunch with us. Like if they have plans, they don't feel forced, but they do look forward to it because they feel like they can take a load off. Everybody legitimately gets along. And that's by design. Like a lot of times, more than anything, more than skill, more than experience, my question is in hiring someone, I was like, will this person get along with everyone in the office? To me, that's my number one thing.
Yeah.
And I've not hired people that anyone else would have been like, how can you not hire this person? I was like, not a good fit. And I had recently, like there was another lawyer. I was like, how can you not hire this person? This person's so qualified. So the minute you didn't hire them, I hired them. It's like, good for you. I'm not saying she's not a good worker or whatever you want to call it. I just felt that their personality was not going to fit with us. They felt very like fa-fa-foo-foo fancy. I was like, we're not fancy. We, you know what I mean? We're very down to earth. And when people like that come in here, it's almost like they get weeded out. And I'd rather not go through that. I don't care how good their work is. If they're not going to fit in our chemistry or system,
culture. Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Oh man. I also wanted you to share with everybody, you created a new core value, and there's definitely a backstory behind this. Okay. The core value that you added was Tesla efficiency mindset. I was geeking out so hard over this when you said like, this is it. And you guys ended up defining it, and you did actually, like everybody was trying, but you sat there, you like closed your eyes, and then you wrote some things on paper, and then you read the definition, and everybody was like, yep, that's it. The definition you gave: constantly evaluates their actions and operates with no wasted energy or movement. I get goosebumps when I think about this and talk about this because it's so creative. It's very you, like your firm. It's the opposite of generic. So many people tend to lean on generic words, and that I get that. There's a reason that people pick a lot of the same words, but this was such a good add to your core value. So tell us more about Tesla efficiency mindset.
Again, like you said, it has a backstory. I'll try to be very quick about it. So I think 2 years ago, I got what I thought was my dream car. And the reality was that over time, I mean, I loved it. There was nothing I could think of was wrong with this car. This was my dream car. But over time, again, you learn things and you try to figure things out. And at that point, I was choosing between that car and a Tesla, right? Well, not super expensive ones, just like Model 3 or whatever. And at the time, I was just like, no, I'm going to go this way because I just feel like I'm not there. My mind was in something different. So the more I kept digging down over the last couple of years about things personally and in the firm, I realized that that was a terrible decision because even though this other car I had was my dream car, it was not a smart or efficient decision in when you look at things. And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, all right, so regardless of how people feel about Teslas or not, their overall vision and what they look to do with their cars is, I was like, yes, that's me. You know what I mean? That's what I try to do, or I'm trying to do with everything that we do. And like you said, it's just no waste of movement. It's an electric car, so you're not wasting gas or anything like that. And even when you're not pressing on the accelerator, it has regenerative braking, which essentially it charges the battery little by little when you don't even have to press the brake, and it brakes the car for you. And I was like, that's brilliant. So you don't even have to waste like brake pads and things like that because the car brakes itself. And I was like, that's how it needs to be when you do things in your daily practice. You need to make sure that everything that you do, there's no waste of movement, that you're not doing mindless tasks that's provide no purpose for you to move forward. It's just a waste of time in general. And the other thing was in comparison again, and I'm using Tesla not necessarily because I'm a super fanboy. Like I do like my now new car, but it's more about just the purpose. Like the fact that they constantly change what the car can do because of their software updates. It shows you what we need to be doing too, which is constantly repositioning and changing what we do to be more efficient and better all the time.
Mm-hmm.
No other car does that. But you as a law firm owner, the minute you, again, stand still, you adapt or die, you have to be in a position where you have to constantly rethink about, is this the best way of doing it? Is this the most efficient way of doing things? Is there a better way of doing it? And I was having this conversation with somebody recently and they were like, oh, no, that's the shiny object syndrome or whatever it is. I'm like, no, because shiny object implies that you're going to constantly change software or computers and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about at all. Can it be that you're changing the software or computer? It can, but not in every situation. We talked about how we tweaked our intake procedure a lot during the last year, but it was because we needed to be flexible and constantly thinking, okay, is this working? This is not working. How can we do it better? How can we make this faster, move better? That's what I'm talking about, that you're constantly finding ways to give yourself an update with regards to how you're doing things. Because again, I feel like if you do things, especially in the world that we live in, where things are changing so fast, and in our practice area where things change so much, you have to be on your toes at all times. And the last thing I thought about, and I thought about it on the plane back here with this in particular, is being obsessive about who you are and what you want. And I really like that about Tesla and the fact that they're not trying to be Ford or Audi or anything. They're being Tesla. They're very loyal about their goal, their mission, and what they want to do. And I was like, yes, that's what I feel like we need to be. We need to be obsessive about being us, not because our competitors are doing X or because so-and-so in this group is doing Y. Does that work for you? And are you doing it based on your own core values and what you're all about? And that's what I meant when I was talking about that. It took me a while to really understand it. I just knew that those things matched up with what we're all about, but what we need to be all about moving forward. And it is being obsessive about who you are, making sure that everything you do has no wasted movement or wasted money, people, resources, whatever it is, no waste, and constantly rethink and reposition yourself in a way that makes you move things forward.
Yeah. So good. That's funny that the person took it as a shiny object syndrome. To me, that'd be like buying a different car.
Right.
But when you're iterating on the car that you have, when you're providing updates to the car that you have, that feels forward thinking and
innovative.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I
think that's what I think we need to be. You need to be innovative at all times. And you need to be finding ways to make things work better for your clients, for your staff, for yourself at all points of the game.
Yes.
Whether it is review quarter or not. That's another thing. I think sometimes people are like, oh, for next quarter, I'm going to do this. I'm like, why are you not looking at it now? If you know that's a problem now, you need to be attacking it now. Granted, you may not have the bandwidth to tackle at that point, which is totally acceptable. But if you do, I think that's how people keep kicking the can down the road. And sometimes I feel like my wife and I are a little too aggressive in trying to change things, which, is not for everybody. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because I feel like we both are the same way, that once we find something that this is going to be better, okay, when are we going to change this? We're always kind of nervous to tell the other one like when, because it's almost like pushing the envelope with each other. I'll be like, tomorrow. She's like, I was thinking tonight. I'm like, oh, okay. Or it can be vice versa. She'll be like, next month. I was like, I'm thinking I'm going to do that right now. Like, you know what I mean? And, but it's good because we push each other in that sense. But yeah, I just think that that's part of the process too. Like, if you know something is inefficient and not working, don't wait until, oh, well, I got to talk to Melissa to see what she thinks. And like, no, I'd rather ask for forgiveness later and be like, oh, was this bad? My bad. Than wait, having something, it's not working just to get, a different opinion. Like, you just need to tackle that now. Because the minute you figure out it's not working, it's already too late.
Yeah, absolutely. You implement, especially the first half of last year, you implemented so much fast that, but you weren't questioning it. Like, it was the right thing to do. But that even, like, you guys implemented a new software, like totally switched software. There was something else that was big that you did internally. There was a switch for people. I don't remember what it is right now, but
we swapped out a lot of people. I mean,
with
so
people.
yeah,
But I
it
was
was
thinking there was
people.
like another tool or something that was like a swap that was maybe it was
There
just
was there was, but I think the biggest things were that we were switching our client management system completely to something different.
Mhm.
And we also did what we called the Perch 2.0.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we did a huge change in our staff because it just wasn't working out.
Yeah. That to me is like before you even had the idea to have this core value, you were being that. That's what needed to happen to upgrade. And you knew it. And you weren't the kind of person that was just going to put it off and put it off. There's never going to be a great time to switch your client management software.
Never.
So,
There's never be a perfect
so
time
you
for that.
just did it. You just ripped the band-aid and you guys handled it with a lot of grace. It wasn't an easy transition. It never is. But you did it. You didn't wait till next quarter or just like you said. And it's good to make those decisions. Don't ask for a bunch of advice from people. Make decisions as the owner, make the decisions that you feel need to be made. And at the turn of every quarter, capture the lessons. Maybe you do it differently next time, but you wouldn't have been able to learn that if had you not just made the decision and gone with your gut or whatever. You're really good at that. I think the best way to maybe wind this down is to say, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. You are very good at playing the long game. These things that we're talking about, everything we've talked about in this episode is playing the long game. Like even from that point in the conversation where we talked about maybe going outside of the guide of a third of the revenue going towards team, where it's like you're making shifts outside of that for the long game. You're not staying within the confines of what people say you should do, generally speaking, because then you're going to keep yourself stuck. You're going to stunt yourself. It's going to be hard to catch up on the work that you need to catch up on because there was some understaffing earlier this year and you need capacity to grow and it's going to be happening fast. So it's just like all those things, all those decisions that you make, you're very good at playing the long game. You very rarely, I don't know if ever, I've had a conversation with you where it was pretty clear that you were being hasty with a decision for a quick win. That's just not how you think. And I don't know if you think of it like that or if you can see that, but it's evident from the outside.
It's not evident to me. It's funny that you mentioned that because I think that sometimes the reason why I try to move so fast is because as patient as apparently I seem to be, I don't feel that I am patient at all. But I also think there are times where you need to be, we were talking earlier about being observant as to how things play out. Because I think a lot of times, for example, we're talking about making decisions to let people go and whatnot. There's been many times where different members have recommended that so-and-so needs to go, or you need to do this, you need to do that. And my approach has been more of a, no, let's wait it out for a second. Never something where it was obvious that a change needed to be made. When it's obvious that a change needs to be made, regardless of what it is, individual or not, you just do it and do it yesterday. But a lot of times, sometimes things just don't necessarily feel right. But you also think that it might be a situation where this person has had the proper training, or this person just started, or there's a particular personal situation going on. You need to be mindful of those things. A lot of times people don't look at the big picture. And when you don't do that, I think you missed out on small details that could give you perspective into how to properly handle situations. So I see what you're saying and thank you. But I think that honestly, I wouldn't say that. I think a lot of times my eagerness to do things like yesterday, I don't think it leads us to do hasty decisions. It just leads me to be obsessive about thinking about the situation. So like if we know that, in all this hiring that we've been doing in the last couple of weeks, I mean, there's been nights that I literally just kept drawing out who's going to fit into our accountability chart. Where can I see this person leading, like growing within? Because it's important to me not just to fit that role now, but will that person be able to grow with us as well? That's why it seems like we might be good at playing that long game, because we try to consider long-term ramifications of things, but not necessarily because we think we're always thinking long-term. It's like, all right, right now we need this. How does that affect things moving forward? And I don't think I was like that before, like years ago, because I wasn't thinking about this in like too much of a business mindset. It was more like, let's see where this goes. Like I'm talking like 2016, 2017.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, I was like, no, 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 no. You've been doing this. Because again, being my own boss was like my biggest fear. So I always thought this was like, let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
But after it seemed evident that I was like, okay, you're not leaving this. You need to make the best of this. That's where I started noticing, like from 2017 to 2018, huge growth, 2018, 2019, huge growth, and so on and so forth.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I think you have to think long term and you have to be purposeful about it. But I think it's because Giselle and I are both the same way, that we obsess once we get an idea or once we get a thought or, this needs to change. We obsess over it so much that we think about it quickly, like, how does this work now? And how is it going to work moving forward?
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from.
Yeah. You're also very good at making quick decisions. Some people are really not good at making quick decisions. I know that there's times where it's a gut thing for you where you'll take more space because something doesn't smell right. Something doesn't feel right on. And so you'll wait. But for the most part, there's times I get on monthly calls with you and you're like, yep, we're doing this. Like you've made some quick decisions that are putting things in motion that aren't at the cost of the things you already committed to. That's the other thing. So you're very good at asking who, not how, can this get done? I think that's great. And then you follow through on your rocks, like the quarterly priorities. I'm speaking of you as the owner. As a team, you do too, but I'm just talking about you for a second. You follow through almost 100% of the time, maybe 100%. If it's 100%, you're probably like, wait a minute, give me credit.
It's 100%, but go on. It's all good.
Is it? Okay. Well, so you follow through 100% of the time on your rocks, and you've done additional things since I've seen you and talked to you, like in between each thing, oftentimes. And this is where we should end it. This idea that I'm giving to share. And on top of that, you are one of the busiest clients I have ever had in terms of your schedule and being at court and prepping for court, like all the things that you are involved in that you don't have a choice. Like that is part of the deal. At the moment, you're going to start stepping out of that more and more, but it is never an excuse for not getting stuff done. It's always done. And you're always organized about it. I don't have to remind you about things. Like you're always just on it. And it speaks so much to how you operate and how you think about things. And maybe the Tesla efficiency mindset like kind of plays into that. It's impressive. And it's such a pleasure to work with you because of how dialed you are, even though I know it doesn't feel like that all the time. There's moments where I see just how crazy things are. And maybe you don't feel like things are dialed, but it's like a chart. Sometimes there's dips, but in the bigger picture, you're dialed. And not many people get all their rocks done. They should, and they could, and they do usually get better time over time at making sure they hit them, but you just do. And actually the only ones, you might be right, the only ones that I think in the past weren't hit were by the team member that left. So maybe that was it. I guess my point is, if I'm rounding this out, and then I'll let you talk. My point is, you always get your stuff done. You always get more done than what I knew you were going to do in terms of decision-making and setting things into motion. And you clearly stay on top of the legal work, and you have an awesome team. So I do get that helps and supports you, but you have an awesome team and you're one of the busiest clients I know. I wish people listening could just cut the crap with themselves. And I have to have these conversations myself too sometimes, but I get to see you in action. And it's a good kick in the pants sometimes for days where I feel busy. And so things start to drop. I can quickly get myself back in line because I do have you as an example of like, no, that's not how this gets to go. Like, no. And so I'm hoping everybody listening to this, just believe me when I say all the things I've just said about Michael and how he operates. Being busy is not an excuse for not getting done what you said you were going to do. It's just not. That's not the problem. If busyness was the problem, Michael would have the problem. It isn't the problem. So I don't know.
No, thank you. I do sometimes look at my calendar and feel like I need to let out a good cry in the morning because it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that we have done a good job, and that's something that I very much, like perfected with you, which is like calendaring your time and like honoring the time that if you say you're going to do this, it should get done.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, sometimes you have to be flexible and move things around,
Mm-hmm.
but as long as they get done, that to me is just critical.
Mm-hmm.
For example, to me, and that's why sometimes when you mention, I think we talked about this at the last retreat, when you said that not everyone completes the rocks, I'm like, then you're not picking the right rocks. Because if the whole point of a rock is that if this doesn't get done, it's going to set you back, then that has to get done.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I read a rock is not like, oh, this would be good to do. No. This is a must do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a, well, it would be nice, or let's see how far we get on. No. Has to be done.
Yeah.
And like you said, one of the reasons why the leader that used to be in our leadership team wasn't there, we had to remote her. I was like, she's the only person that's not hitting her rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times I was like, well, maybe I should just do it. I was like, no, because that's the whole point. If you're delegating those things to this person, and she's your supervisor, then you're creating an environment where everybody else is going to be like, oh, well, if I don't do it, then Michael's going to do it.
Right.
So I purposely let those things go because I felt like I had to.
Yeah.
Could I have done her rocks too on top of mine and everything else? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the point. And again, that's why to me, when you mentioned that sometimes people let their rocks go, I'm like, I don't think that's not an option. Then either you didn't pick the right rock, that wasn't important enough, shouldn't have been a rock, it should have been an action item or whatever, or a goal. Mm-hmm. Because to me, a rock is something that will hurt you if it doesn't get done.
Yes.
I know the word is setback, but in my mind, it's like, no, this will hurt you. Yeah. This will not let you operate normal, not hurt you in growth, hurt you in your everyday functioning. And I think once you enter into that mindset, it's like, okay, so this is not an option. This needs to get done. This is something that will have to be done. Granted, when you get into that purpose, you start gaining ground. All of a sudden, sometimes things pop up, like you mentioned, and you're like, this would have been good to do too. And you just get so geeked out about it. You're like, do I really want to wait to the next quarter to do this? Or do I want to like add that on? Sometimes there's a lot. And some other times like, no, this can be added. We can do this. And whether that means delegating it or taking it on your own, whatever. But I just feel that if you leave something for later, you either are not going to be as passionate about it later. Mm-hmm. You may think that, oh, well, I mean, that's, maybe later. But I mean, if you can do it now and you can put yourself in an even better position than you thought at the end of the quarter or year, then do it. Mm-hmm. Don't wait it out because you need someone to validate it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think, yes, I've come to you a lot of times with, hey, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? But a lot of other times I'm like, hey, so we did this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, totally. And the thing that strikes me is that at least you set things in motion because maybe they don't get totally done in the same quarter, but it's like, you weren't going to let that just sit on a shelf. You got it in motion. And maybe when we have the quarterly retreat, it's like that dialing that in is part of what you want to do in the next quarter. And here's the thing. You are good though. There is a lot. Yeah. What is it about you walking lines? You walk lines really well. There is a line though, because some people will start things and abandon their rocks for the new things. That's shiny object. That isn't what you have. You have, I am doing these things and I am committed to finishing these things. And I'm going to get this in motion. You almost play like a puppeteer. You try to navigate like how this can get started without you being the one to do all the work. Yeah, it almost feels like there's another visual I have in my head of you walking around the office with magic, like lightning, like you're striking over there and you're striking, like you're kind of throwing lightning around the office, like getting things going. And that's just how you roll. It's just your ideas don't stop and you don't shelve them, but you don't execute them at the cost of what you already committed to.
Yeah, because that's the thing. If you leave a rock untouched, like you abandon it, like you mentioned, or you keep swapping the cost of something else or adding something at the cost of something else, then again, you pick the wrong rocks. Mm-hmm. Or if it's the right rock and you're trying to like shiny object, change it somewhere else, then what you're creating is a confusing environment for your team. You're saying, yeah, that's important. However, this other thing's important too. So I'm going to abandon that. No, no, no. If you find two things that are sufficiently important, then you didn't give yourself enough things to do, or you really didn't pick out the right project or rock. So again, to me, it just seems very clear that if you pick out a rock, you need to like really, really dig deep and be like, if I don't do that, is that going to hurt me? And the minute you start thinking that, oh, well, if this doesn't get done, it's going to be okay. No, you have to think that like, no, that's going to hurt me. And like today, when we're having our leadership meeting, we went through all our rocks. I was like, yep, all those things are vital to make sure that things keep moving forward. And all of them are on track and all of them are going to get done. To me, the only way a rock, and I told this to one of our team members, is the only way a rock shouldn't be done is because of physical impossibility. Like if you pick something out and it's like, hey, you're sick, can't complete that. Or that, let's say like you have a marketing plan and that you wanted to go to a radio station and that radio station is not taking new ads or whatnot. Okay, then that's a physical impossibility. Like it cannot be done. That's the only way in my mind that a rock should not get done. That is just impossible because of something
like
beyond your control.
Yeah, beyond your control. Yeah.
Beyond that, to me, in my mindset, it absolutely has to get done or it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I'm telling you that this is a mindset thing because there's plenty of owners out there that would say that in the meeting. Like there's an emotional high about like, yes, like this needs to be done. And I do think that there's something to be said for getting better and better at choosing your rocks. Sometimes that's a journey in and of itself. But the truth is, like you're saying that's because it's Michael Urbina talking. A lot of people don't have that same mindset that it has to be done. There is this thing that humans do where they're comfortable. It's very uncomfortable to make the change. They're the kind of person that needs to be like, it needs to be so messy and painful before they're willing to just like, oh, okay, now for real, we have to do it. Not everybody operates the way that you do. I think people want to, and I think it sounds great, and they'll get in a room and they'll make these commitments that are the right commitments. There's no perfect commitment, right? So like you're selecting what you're going to focus on the next 90 days. But then they go back into real world and the excuses take over and they feel like valid excuses, right? Like I am busy, I am drowning in my clients or stuff that's going on outside of the firm. I'm not saying that that isn't hard, but it's just not a reason that you ever accept. That is what I think is rare. And I think that it's good for you to continue to be successful because people will see people like you, but they'll be looking at you and this is how you operate. And it will sort of help wake people up to like, oh, that. So you just keep being more successful. You just keep doing what you're doing. You build the firm and the life of your dreams. People will be observing and they'll start to mimic and model the behavior that you've shown. That's important. So I'm glad you're in this sphere, Michael Urbina. You're inspiring to me. I facilitate a lot of this stuff, but you and Giselle and your team, you're really inspiring. It's such a privilege to work with you guys. So thank you.
No, thank you. I think, like I said, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be in the same mindset if it wasn't for certain questions or things that I've heard you say over the years at this point that just made me think about things in a different perspective. I remember, and I guess I can quote him. So I remember Joey Vitale once said this about you, and it's so true, that Melissa asks the right questions. And God, that's so true. Like, a lot of times we'll be talking about something and you ask me a question, I'm like, and you're legitimately asking it, but I'm like,
curious.
Okay, I see what you did there. And you're like, what? I'm like, no, I got you. And in my head, it already worked out because you didn't tell me, hey, X. You're like, what about this? I'm like, X, got it. Like, you know what I mean? It's just sometimes it's about putting you in the right wavelength for you to like understand it. Now, you have to be receptive to it. But I think the way I see it is two things. Like when I report to you what we're doing, I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm following through with what we talked about. Because then what was the point of sitting in Denver for 2 days if we're not following up on these things?
Yeah.
And also, like, it's important that if you're going to make an investment to have someone facilitate these conversations and things for you, that you're taking advantage of it. Because otherwise, then what are we doing? Like, if you're not helping us understand ourselves better and move forward, then I don't know. So I really have you to thank for, and again, I'm never going to forget like our leaders' reactions to the first time after they met you. They were like, oh my God. I'm like, uh-huh. Is that a good oh my God or a bad oh my God? And they're like, no. Like my mind is blown. I'm thinking about so many things and seeing the change in their mindset into having these, retreats as a leadership team, not just me and my wife. It's mind blowing how much that has yielded to our firm continuing to grow. So,
so glad. Gosh, thank you. Thanks for coming on the show. And thank you for just so much more.
No, thank you for having me. I love doing this thing. That's fun.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon on our coaching call.
All right. See you next time.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there. If you enjoyed this podcast, I highly recommend you come and check out Mastery Group. It is where owner attorneys come together to study this material, apply it, and thus create really big results for their firm and for their life. So come on over, velocitywork.com/join to get more information and get started. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.